Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar by Phrase, which is titled Powerful Localization Insights Right at Your Fingertips. My name is Clara, and I'm happy to welcome you here today. Thank you for tuning in and for finding the time. Now let's see the agenda for today. So first, I'm going to introduce our presenters for today, who will then cover the business values of using the data that are available to you. Then what data access options there are at Phrase. And then we will focus on one of the solutions, which is advanced analytics, and we will do a demonstration of that solution. At the end, we will do a short Q&A session and answer your questions. Now let me introduce the speakers. We have Tobias Scherf, who is our Director of Solutions, and we have Jakub Janičkovič, our Enterprise Solution Architect. They are both experts, and they will walk you through the topics today. So over to you, Toby.
Yeah, thank you, Clara. Welcome to the webinar, and thank you for your time this morning or afternoon. So business values around analytics and why even bother with analytics, right? So let's discuss this first, and then we can kind of move into some of the other aspects on how we solve your analytics needs. First of all, one of the reasons of why I would want to have analytics is, of course, to understand your program beyond just the obvious of measuring maybe costs, time, and quality. There are others, of course, where I want to maybe have KPI dashboarding and the like, right? I may have a situation where I need to provide stakeholder reports, right? Data on the program return of investment. So how much money are we spending on localization versus how much money are we actually gaining out of it? Or if I'm an LSP, for instance, how much money are we, spending for our production versus how much are we gaining through sales, right? Providing team-wide visibility and clarity with respect to your program. So understanding where your program actually is operating, how well it's operating, and where there is maybe room for improvement and where things are not working so well. Creating performance frameworks, so KPI dashboards or measurement dashboards, right, where I can have an eye on quality, an eye on maybe cost, and so on, right? And I can measure where I'm tracking with respect to those items. And I can also long-term measure where my tendencies are, where my trends are going, and then take corrective action if I need to in order to arrive maybe at different results, whether that's quality-based, time-based, volume-based, so on. I want to maybe visualize and monitor the impact of operational change. So let's say I do make a change in my operation. I have an expected outcome. Without actually looking at data, I will not be able to say whether that change was effective, right? We can have sort of an anecdotal or subjective, impression of something, whether it works or not. But the real truth is really in the data in the end to understand whether something had an impact and how much of an impact it made, right? And so you can learn through data, not just whether the changes are effective, but how much they actually were, changing the result or changing a certain outcome. You may be looking for ways to reduce costs. You may be looking to improve productivity and or quality, right? And so where and where does it make sense to put your effort? So data can also help you identify, where you need to put your effort versus, where maybe your time investment and or other investments around cost and or money investment are maybe not going to yield high results, right? So why invest in something that yields like a very small improvement in the end versus something that has a higher improvement capability? And again, data can give you that insight. You can move to a more scalable model, so management by exception. So looking at data, you can also kind of step back and you can do more large-scale operations. So depending on how your program is structured, at that point, you may move from babysitting or micromanaging certain steps in a project to looking at a lot of projects going at the same time and really using the data to tell you where your attention needs to go, right? Versus you stepping into every single aspect of the production and trying to control it. With proper KPI dashboarding and proper reports in place, you can manage a lot of these things from a very large, high skill operational perspective, and then really kind of operate at a different level and much more lean. You can operate at scale with a lean team ultimately in that case, right? You can do root causing and of challenges more quickly. So understanding your data will also help you to kind of arrive at a conclusion or an area where further investigation will give you the root cause result. At least you can pinpoint those areas rather than just having no idea where to start. Data will typically give you an insight on where something is not working, and it'll lead you down the path where the root cause is going to be. And it allows you to prevent recurrence of issues, of course. So by understanding the root cause and or diving into certain data aspects, you can then also put the corrective measures in place. And like I mentioned just previously, see how those will actually impact your overall operational change, your operational situation. All right. Let's move to the next. So data access options at Phrase. So now that you have maybe an idea of maybe how we think or some of our customers think about analytics or why they are so interested in data, and you have, of course, your own ideas, what do we offer as Phrase for you to take advantage of? So let's talk about advanced analytics. There's customizable data insights and dashboarding, right? You have, it's designed for ease of use. You have data points that are pre-aggregated in advanced analytics for common data insights. So meaning you don't really have to fish through a lot of data or try to aggregate the data into meaningful ways. It's already pre-aggregated for you in very meaningful ways around leverage, savings, cost, time, and so on, and quality. So you get a lot of data insights very simply, very easily, very quickly. The data refreshes currently every 24 hours. So you get new data insights every 24 hours for your operation. You can perform data downloads of your data. So if you want to extract that data and use it externally, you can do that via CSV, Excel, and JSON formats. You have data available in your platform. So that means that you don't have to step outside. So we can have other solutions that do this outside, but with advanced analytics, you can remain in platform and also see it right where you operate. Any of the external data sharing that requires ultimately download or platform access in that case, right? So advanced analytics will require you to extract the data via the mentioned format, CSV, Excel, or JSON. And then if we click, it'll show the next. Okay, so in contrast to that, we have also a solution called Snowflake. And Snowflake integration essentially allows you via your own BI platform to, again, produce customizable data insights and dashboarding. So similar to advanced analytics, it's designed for complex data insights. So I have access to all your data, but they're not pre-aggregated as much as they are in advanced analytics. So it's not quite as simple as advanced analytics, and you have to do typically some joint operations with your data to get more broad data insights that have all the information you want. You can connect all your production data with external data points. So the insight or the advantage of Snowflake in that case is that it's because you have access to your data via BI platform, and you can have like your data stored in a Snowflake or another data lake, you have the ability to actually control or aggregate the data also from external data points together from other tools with your production data from Phrase. So that can be very powerful and insightful, specifically if you have other systems that you want to have data flowing in from. The data there refreshes twice every 24 hours. So you have essentially a 12-hour turn for your data. The formats basically are your BI platform can generate. So for exports, you're not necessarily limited to CSV, Excel, or JSON, but whatever your BI platform can handle, often similar formats, but there may be more. You have data available externally in your BI platform. That means you're not going to be inside of Phrase for this, but you will have to have, a BI platform that will be able to publish dashboarding, for instance, and then you can hit that usually via web browser. But it is a separate data access from our platform in that case. External data sharing, again, would then be through your BI platform. So if you wanted to invite external stakeholders. So again, from the perspective of a language service provider, you wanted to showcase to your customer certain data points, you would do that for your BI platform and then shared a particular dashboard or report with them. Or if internally within your organization and enterprise, you want to show to other organizations within your other teams within your organization, you would have to share via BI platform. All right. Then what data users really want to see and what's possible, right? So mentioned advanced analytics today is really kind of the focus, but there's a number of things that sort of came from also the use of Snowflake and other data, including our basic analytics that customers are really interested in, right? So KPI dashboards, of course, is one of them for on-time delivery, quality metrics, budgets, and so on. Even going out to, let's say, machine translation performance data, and understanding how well your operation works with multiple aspects and facets, right? Filtering of the data by all metadata fields. So our basic analytics are somewhat more limiting, right? You have some control over filtering your data and also what data points you see. With the advanced analytics, you have access to the full data behind each data table, and you can actually then also control what the visualization looks like and what filter options you have and what metadata fields you filter on. Asset leverage to understand the impact on cost and reduction. So you want to maybe see how much money you're saving through the use of TM and MT and what that looks like, right? You want to maybe check provider capacity load based on assigned work. So how much work is on providers' plate and how much is it that they can typically handle? And where you stand in that. So you could have like a goal line essentially that gives you the overall max capacity over a time frame, and then measure that compared to the current assigned work, and just kind of understand whether you're at capacity or below. Average cost per word localized, so you can calculate your overall cost or as an average, the average high load time for steps between new to assigned to completed. So how long does it take jobs to essentially go through between stages and how much time is spent at each stage or in between. So you can understand where there's delays in your processing. So if you're trying to speed up your processing, you can focus on an area specific to where there's maybe room for improvement, right? Team capacity and PM loading. So you can, of course, create all the reports by project managers and or by team, and therefore understand like how much work is sitting with a specific team or team members to understand capacity, and also if there's needs to be a shift, maybe hiring, further automation, and things like that, right? Detailed analysis in conjunction with editing time. So you want to maybe see how much time are people actually spending on individual segments, right, or an average of segments, and how maybe that contributes to the overall quality, or what the quality aspect looks like in conjunction with the editing time. So understanding not just the analysis data and or how much maybe, let's say, certain content was changed by somebody in an editing step, but also understanding maybe as a matter of a component, how much time they spend on the entire job can give some additional insights versus just one of them, right? The cost comparison, human versus machine translation and post editing. Again, also a quality, of course, a quality concern. So you want to look at it maybe both ways, from a cost perspective and quality aspect, and see what makes sense for the content, right, versus what the cost is and where the best fit is ultimately. production rates by department. So understanding what departments in, for instance, an enterprise, or this could also be a client if you're an LSP, how much there are in terms of like job volumes, board count volumes, and maybe overall costs. And you want to understand like how much or how busy each department keeps you ultimately, or how much volume they produce. Volume or cost by content source. So this could be integrations. This could be maybe if content's flowing through like a submitter portal on our side and you want to tag something and understand, okay, well, how much content are we getting through what channel ultimately? And then understand also where you maybe have room for optimization, or what is a high volume channel versus maybe a low volume channel, and how to optimize one or the other. Use language pairs and trending, so you can understand like what are busiest languages, where do we essentially have the most volume produced, or maybe even the biggest challenges, right? Ultimately, maybe with resourcing. So can look at this from an HR perspective or from a vendor management perspective as well, understanding and pre-planning sort of my vendor profile, whether that's as an enterprise or I'm in an LSP and need to understand how many linguistic resources I may need for capacity planning. So understanding that also helps like where to put the effort in terms of recruitment, right? And then a ratio of jobs with MT versus maybe without MT. So looking how much machine translation adoption you have, of course, for the right content, but where maybe it's underutilized, maybe it's overutilized, right? And understanding that ratio and seeing where there's maybe opportunities for further improvement on maybe adoption of machine translation and linear processing. All right, let's move to Jakub, who's going to show a demonstration on the platform.
Thank you, Toby. So to begin with, you are probably all familiar with this view. I decided to start here just to kind of put it into context of what is available outside of the advanced analytics, right? So this is the basic analytics, phrase analytics, where, like Toby mentioned, you have predefined charts. These are based on our research within the our customer pool, trying to figure out what are the most useful kind of charts people tend to look into, and what filtering options, like you see on top, they tend to go for to give some basic insights. But on the other hand, you cannot show everything without cluttering views, and because everyone would have their nuances. I want a domain here, I want a subdomain here, right? So then you run into the question of how much you actually want to put in here, because it's predefined, it's something ready-made out of the box. Hence comes the advanced analytics, where you see each of these, volume, time, quality, have their own respective data source in the advanced analytics. So with advanced analytics, you're actually getting access directly to the backbone of these predefined reports. But we don't only give you access to the data source, but also we give you the keys to them to find all the fields that are available and maybe didn't make the cut to the predefined reports. So to walk you through this, what advanced analytics are and how they work, this is the basic view you get to when you go into advanced analytics. You have the home view, so you can see some of those reports or dashboards I worked on before. Like it says, pick up where you left off. And then you have your collections. So you may have different uses for different charts and dashboards. So collections make it easy for you to categorize PM work versus reporting work, to navigate quickly and have the data available as quickly as possible. But the most important part, or parts, plural, is this browse data button and this new button. Both of them give you different options to do. With the new button, you are either making the collection, but more importantly, you can make a dashboard of the charts you created or reports you created. And maybe the most important of them all is the question, or kind of a paraphrase of the SQL query from the data world. So you're going to ask the advanced analytics for some information. But before we do that, let's actually go here where, just to kind of prove the point of you having access to the data points directly, each of the charts in here has a data point available here. And you can go in and you can look at what's the data available in each of those, which I would suggest actually as a starting point to see what endpoints, what data points, what measures we are actually collecting in each of those categories to see what might spike interest for you, right? So we can start with the analysis detail table, where you have your, of course, some of the data is not important for you, right? Analysis ID, internal ID, but what is important, analysis type, right? You want to split the report by pre and post editing analysis, because you're going to be basing different metrics on each of those. So you have your data for post editing analysis to evaluate efforts, but you can contrast it in a different report, for example, with the default analysis results. So what were the expected, the projected word counts versus what ended up being done. Of course, you have additional information you probably don't need, like who made the analysis and so on. But you have your language information. You have the where or which workflow was the analysis run, and then additional information like the metadata, like Toby mentioned, right? The client name, the business unit name, cost center, and then most interestingly, you have the results of the analysis, right? So, and it's the detailed breakdown like you have in the UI itself. So each of those categories has their corresponding field. So you can see how the data is breaking down in each of these. What you also have available in each of the data sources is the option to filter, right? Because you don't necessarily need to look at all the data for all the years you have been working with Phrase, right? So you can narrow down specific criteria by date, or all of those metadata fields, or let's say columns, as they are referred to in the database, you can use filterings on those. So for example, you could see here, I have a lot of those, let me scroll here, a lot of client fields unassigned because I didn't use them. So I can filter for only the data where I actually have a client. If I want to have a report on the specific client, I can filter by that field. This, and just by the way, there is a search bar that's very handy, especially with the number of columns you have. So you have options, and you can do, is it empty? Is it not empty? But in our case, is not unassigned, right? And you can see there is the suggestions, right? So it's coming from the system directly to help you. So apply filter. So that kind of quite a big chunk of data will go away. And we can also filter by other fields, combine, right? So you can have multiple of these. So let's say look at only post analysis, pre-analysis, depending on what kind of report you actually want to do. So you can see the data has been kind of shortened in here. The other thing you can do is summarize. So this is really combining the data on different kinds of calculations. Let's say this is count of rows. So this is how many entries, how many analyses do I have? How many jobs do I have? But maybe I want to have a summary of all the words in specific categories from the analysis. I want to do, like Toby mentioned, I want to do an average, I want to do a median, right? All of these kind of calculations you can do. And then you can do groupings, which means how should the data kind of come together? Let's say I want to do the word count analyzed, but I want to group it by the analysis type, right? So I get separate results for default analysis and the post editing analysis to kind of give me a different insight within the chart. That's for analysis, right? And you have these kinds of or different breakdowns in other categories as well, or other data points. You have your costs, you have, again, results of the quotation, but you have the total price and you have the actual price. So this comes down to net rate scheme being applied. So in the reports, you would have, or let's say analysis, you have one of those available, right? So you either take the data with the net trade scheme applied or without it. In here, you have both at the fingertips, right? You can compare the pricings and see how those relate to one another, especially for, again, like to be mentioned, language combinations and billing units, quotes, projects, and of course, metadata, right? So again, the unassigned client name and all the other information that we can look into. Job detail, right? So you have, again, languages, file names, extensions. So I'm just trying to demonstrate what Toby was mentioning, that the data is pre-aggregated. You don't have to, as you would need to with Snowflake, for example, or the direct database access, you don't have to reference other data points. You don't have to go somewhere else to find information about the job that was analyzed, or you don't have to find analysis results for the quote that was created. All those kind of columns are added there for you to have this ready-made report available. But what you can do is actually join these together in case you need additional information from other sources. So that's where this question comes in, because yes, you can do a lot of things here. You can go to the data point and you can browse the tables, you can filter, you can even, let's say, see distribution. Just by the way, the columns are clickable on top. There's an arrow. It's not visible well in my resolution, but you can, click it. You can have data, let's say, aggregate. Also on the bottom, you have visualization. So on top, it shows the charts that could be useful for you for the data that you have. So here I can just switch into the columns and see how my word count, or sorry, the leverage is distributed among the languages. Right. So you can, do clickings and configurations like that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can do a lot just by going to the data source. However, if you want to make your own report, if you want to make it custom really and leverage other data points as well, that's where this question comes in, because you are constructing, right? Because you can think about all those data sources as being pre-prepared like this, right? So what do I want to do? We did the pre-filtering by these categories, and you are narrowing down on a specific report you want. So let's say volume, right? So that's my data source. That's the biggest report I want to use. And you have this arrow here that allows you to pick the columns you want, right? Like in the data source, you saw everything, which, might be okay, but it's a lot of data points. So, and not all of them are necessary. You don't need the project UID, for example, unique ID of a person assigned. You don't need that. So you can unselect and just pick. And just by the way, something like the date needs to be selected. So there is one that always gets added. Otherwise, you just get an empty report and that's pointless. So there is something selected for you in these data points. But then on top, you are picking what things you want to see. So let's say target locale, job creator, maybe, that would be the report Toby mentioned on the workload by the PM, because there you can see how many jobs are being created by a specific PM. And if that PM is an integration user, you can see how much content is flowing through your custom integration with whatever system you have. You can have a dedicated user that created Salesforce Knowledge Connector or AEM connector. So it's not a person, it's a machine user for this purpose, right? So of course, you can do it with other measures or other means. You can do metadata, you can do, just metadata would be the easiest. But, for integrations, especially when you have something built through the APIs, there is usually a user associated with it. And then it creates various kinds of projects, but you want to bundle all of them, let's say all the marketing, all the legal, so you can do it by the job creator, because that's the person, that machine user that created all of those. So you can see, oh, that's my bulk of data that is coming through our integration. And of course, other information, but I'm just gonna keep target locale and let's say in here, words processed. By the way, the words processed, that's the volume of the job that went in? Right? That's a question we often get is, I have 17 pages or 17 sheets in Excel, but I imported 2 of them. So it's the actual amount of words that ended up being in the system after exclusions and file import settings and pre-filterings. That's the amount that was processed, literally, as the name says, what went into the system. So we could do that, right? Like we could have this preview button and just, yeah, okay, we have this locale and these words. However, I mentioned we can combine the data, right? So I can join it with another table. So I'm joining my volume with, let's say, quality, right? And then we need to pick a column, right? So you are in, for those of you familiar with SQL, you would know you need to pick how they should be joined together. To make it simple, there needs to be a common field between the 2 tables, right? So you are referencing the same information in 2 tables. So there needs to be something that identifies the same thing in both tables. In our case, it's going to be the job UID, because we are going to look at the volume of a job, but also the quality of the job. So it's the same job we are looking for, and the unique identifier of a job is the job UID. So, and just before I have a lot of columns generated, here we have the other dropdown as opposed to the one on top. So for the second data source, where we can again pick what we want to see from the second table. And here we want to see the score, and we want to see the category, and maybe the severity and the counts, let's say, right? So we have all of those. And again, we can hit this play. It's the preview button, right? To show you what's gonna happen when you actually generate the view. And here we can see that in our preview, we don't have much. So it picked the jobs where I don't have really anything. So this might be a good place to add filters where we want to see score and the quality. And again, you have the options. So we want to see only jobs where the score is bigger than 0, right? So we don't want to see things that are empty, just like this. It doesn't give us anything. So we can have report like this. Maybe a thing that would be useful, because now we have no way of identifying what are we actually reporting on, is go back, right? So that's why we have the preview button. We can go back and we can see, oh, I don't know what job that is. So maybe, what do we do? Job state, no, let's say the job UID. So, but actually this would be a good candidate for, let's say, another join, because we don't have an information about the job here. So let's do another join here. We can do the job details. And again, we want to have the job UID, but from the details, we don't need all of this, but we need a file name and maybe, let's see, workflow step, workflow step name. So where are we in the workflow? What are we reporting on for that specific file name? And let's see, that's probably it, right? So if we generate the preview now, it gives us better information, or actually, let's use this one on the bottom with the filters. So we can refresh the data. And now we are, more equipped to find the job we're interested in. Again, this isn't probably not enough. We would probably need like a project name as well, but it's good enough for now. And then of course we could do the summary or the groupings, but let's start with the visualize. So now it gets pre-crunched, and now we have the table ready. And as Toby mentioned, you can download the results, right? So you have certain view, you have certain results, but crunching through it in this view like this might be tedious, especially with results like this, wherever that came from. So maybe just download it into an Excel CSV JSON and put it into your platform that you're using for reporting, or just pre-process the data in Excel if you would like to do that. Or you can try to visualize some of it. Now this is empty, so because there's a lot of data. So what do we want to visualize? So X is the bottom one, Y is the top one. I had to refresh that from school, so just putting it out there. So on X, what do we want? Target locale, and on Y, we want to have words processed, and we have the same kind of a report we had before. But maybe we want to also put in the score. So this is the volume, and this is the score. And in the display, you also have the option to kind of to say how you're stacking the bars together, because this is now, you have two charts essentially combined together. One set of columns is for words processed, and the other one is for the quality score. Maybe we want to put it into one, right? So we have this amount of words, and this is the score out of the 100, let's say. So it kind of compares those two, but it depends on where it makes sense, right? That in this case, it doesn't. That's why I have prepared a few reports as a result in my, to demonstrate the collection and demonstrate a dashboard. Once you have, some charts created, some questions, let's put it that way, you can make a dashboard where you can put those questions in to display the results. So you have them aggregated. You can edit the dashboard, you can auto refresh, but most importantly, you can go in and download each of those results, or you can just see what is the, at a glance results directly here. And I can actually show you the charts I have there. So, and just by the way, on the bottom, you see kind of the results like of the joins and things like that. This is the timeliness with the total and net words. So this is a demo account, so some of the data doesn't look right, but here you can see that this is the total amount of words with the net amount of words, for example, and compared to one another. The other one is, this one, and capacity by incomplete word count. So this is what Toby mentioned, right? What I have here, this line, that's a custom line I have, with the goal line, let's say, being what's the word count that people can work with during a day, or my daily quota. So I see how many people I can still use, how many they don't have the capacity met for the day, and how many are overshooting. So this person probably we need to split off the word count and give it to someone else. And here we want to add more, and so on and so forth. The one that I showed, or the other one that I had, what also was mentioned by Toby, is the leverage breakdown, right? So we have the 100% being all the words from the given category, and you can see the distribution of those categories in the word count bands. So this is the TM match, and different categories being 100%, 101, it's color coded. And the same goes for repetitions. This is the total, so that's not useful too much. And then, machine translation, what score for machine translation we have, non-translatable as well, right? So, and then of course you can pre-filter by the analysis type, pre-filter by, net versus raw. So it really depends on what kind of information you would want to be filtering for or filtering by, and then you drill down on those settings. Let's see if I have, time spent. Again, demo account, so I didn't have much editing time, but you have the score, you have the people assigned, and then you have how much. So for example, here, how many hours the job was in emailed before it was accepted. But in this case, we have, for example, editing time. So this is 45 seconds on a standard workflow. Maybe this was a quick post editing of a small job coming from MT. Right. So a lot of options. I hope I've shown you the way to create the charts and create the reports with the data points, as well as how to turn them into charts and visualizations, so you can go on and explore.
Okay, thank you, Jakub. Is it time for questions now? Are you ready? Looks like we are.
Ready. Always ready.
And let's begin with the first one. Would the advanced analytics work to summarize the total word count a linguist does in a month?
Yes, yeah, it would. Yeah, you can do the same kind of a chart I showed at the end with the capacity or how many words are assigned. But in my view, it was filtered by the state not being completed. So you can do the other way around. And as well, you add the filtering for give me jobs created in this month and created in this month and also completed now. So you see the volume that was assigned to the person and is now finished.
Okay, thank you. Next one, can other users see the dashboards and reports that I built?
No, you need to recreate them yourself because these are personalized in the collection.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's maybe goes to a point that is actually still being built out. So right now it is personal only. So every user has their own set of charts and dashboards they can create, but our team is working for a upcoming release to allow you to share those internally to the organization as well. So you'll be able to build them in one place and then share them across.
Thank you. Next question, would it help to check the certain translators' translation quality dynamics?
Yes, yeah, because as was in the, let's say, the score dashboard, you can have a breakdown of this, let's say the scoring, the number of category reports and so on to see how the person is performing over time. Let's say how many errors in terminology they are doing now versus 2 months ago.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next question. Is it possible to only allow certain project managers within my organization to access advanced analytics?
No, that's the same as Toby mentioned with the personalized charts. So now it's one or all or nothing. But again, it's something that the team is looking into.
Yeah. The only additional thing you can do also from a data perspective is limiting the data access. So you can basically allow project managers to see all platform data or just their own data. So you can limit that sort of the data access on the project manager level at this point.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't see any other questions at this point. So I think that's it. Thank you very much, Toby and Jakub, for the presentations and for the demo. Thank you again to our audience for joining us today. And I hope to see you at another webinar very soon. Thank you very much and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.